Hello, my name is Sebastian and this is a presentation on the Sebasteion at Aphrodisias. The site was excavated from 1979 to 1980 and is of incredible architectural, archaeological, and historical importance because of the sheer amount of sculptures and information found at the site, and because of the location where everything was found. It was found in Asia Minor in a city called Aphrodisias in the area of Calia. The most significant thing about the site itself is not the architecture or exactly where it's located, but the many sculptures and the condition that they were found in. There are about 80 relief panels that are left today, and the complex would have been called Sebasteion, which we see from an unrelated inscription. Sebasteion is the Greek word for Temple of Augustus. The construction of the structure stretched for over 2 generations, from 20 to 60 AD, and it stretched from the reign of Tiberius all the way to that of Nero. Most of the cost of the building was taken by two of the leading local families, and Aphrodisias was one of the first towns in Asia Minor to embrace Roman rule, and because of this they benefited from incredible privileges from the Roman elite. The building of the structure was to acknowledge Roman law and Roman rule, and to show their sort of subjugation to this, their embracing of Roman culture. The temple and the surrounding relief sculptures were built as a monument to the Julio-Claudian line, since they associated themselves with the goddess Aphrodite, which was herself a patron goddess of the city of Aphrodisias. Many of the reliefs show related figures such as Aeneas, Julius Caesar, Augustus, and later on other Julio-Claudian emperors. Seen above is a plan where we can see sort of the two porticos that directly face each other that went along the edge of the structure of the site itself, and all of the sculpture and all of the relief is on either end of the porticos, and it was a two-story sort of structure. Each story featured different kind of imagery and iconography, with the lower floor being more known for its 45 Greek mythological scenes, and many are arranged in groupings of familiar and favorite figures that are very typical across the Mediterranean, such as Dionysus and Hercules. And there is not necessarily a sort of sequential program followed through the sculptures. On the ascent, however, when one approaches the temple, there is a more sort of concentration of sacrifice-related myths, and these are more Roman rather than Greek, and these feature Anchises and Aeneas, which is another connection that they draw from the Julio-Claudian line, seeing as they stem from Aeneas. The upper story reliefs juxtapose traditional Greek gods with Roman imperial scenes, and with a lot of the figures of victory. There's emperors all the way from Augustus to Nero, Tiberius and Claudius included, that are seen in a very sort of elevated, enlarged manner. This is a very typical of Hellenistic reliefs. They are presented as a part of a sort of Olympian pantheon, so they're included within the gods, and this is a sort of way of showing how important or how glorious, borderline deified they are. And they are the Olympian god emperors. That is what Sebastois Olympios means. It's an inscription in one of the panels. And all of these are meant to highlight not just the emperors themselves, but their conquests and their sort of feats. We see the feats of Claudius and Nero, Nero in Armenia and Claudius in Britannia, and we see their sort of importance in the military sense. And it shows Claudio-Julian rule and their triumphs and their excellence as their imperial sort of dynasty continues to rule Rome. And it is this juxtaposition between the two stories, the sort of Greek and Roman myth and history, the sort of combination between the real and the legendary, that makes this site so important. It shows how the Greeks and the Romans managed to intertwine their history and their sort of similar iconography into this sort of continuous narrative where we see the emperors take over the gods and their sort of rule on earth. These emperors are seen as the next coming of the Olympians, and they're supposed to be glorified and deified, and this juxtaposition between the real and the myth is what gives this site so much importance. It's because they are comparing the gods to the Julio-Claudian line, and it's this sort of like reverement and this sort of deification of them that we see in the site. The sculptures are relevant not just because of the imagery that they're showing, but also because of the style that it is done in. The site is famous because of the many reliefs, but because they are not homogeneous and they do not follow the same sort of style. There are some that are done in a more Roman sense, some that are done in a more Hellenistic sort of style, and it is this combination of the two that makes the site so remarkable. We see a combination between Hellenistic elements of art, for example, the enlarging of and the glorification of figures, versus the more Roman typical sort of classical representation of figures, where they're seen more centrally. There's also a couple panels where we see figures that are a little bit more tilted, which is uncommon in either Hellenistic or Roman art. It's this sort of melange of different styles between the two different porticos that makes this site so special, and because of the types of images that are shown, the juxtaposition between the figures. In the end, Aphrodisias proves to be an incredibly significant site where we see a combination of figures, deities, triumphs, and styles all combined in one place. And it is of excellent example to know not just how Romans ruled Rome, but how Romans ruled their different territories and how these sort of cultures combine across the Mediterranean.